Children, snakes in desks, and shh, no talking. That includes in tongues, Luke.
My snake is dead.
You can bring him back from the dead after class. Okay, today we're going to be learning why Mr. Jesus invented America and how all of you can return the favor. For God so loved the United States, his greatest sacrifice wasn't dying on a cross. It was living in another country. The saddest story ever told. But even though Mr. Jesus' earthly travels might suggest otherwise, his financial blessings let us know that his motto is always America first.
Is Mr. Jesus talking about the Native Americans? Because they lived in America first.
Harlot. We'll have no critical race theory lies in this class. Fact. It wasn't even called America then. So how could they have lived in America? Checkmate, liberals. Meanwhile, back in reality, Mr. Jesus created America so there would be a holy place that forbade the two naughtiest sins. The one where the baby comes out of the mommy, and the one where the daddy goes into the other daddy.
But Mr. Jesus never talked about either.
And that is how we know Mr. Jesus hated them most. Oh, poor thing. Those two sins drove him so nuts, he couldn't even bring himself to mention them.
Really?
Not even once. Sad case of a weak tummy. We more rugged Christians must devote our lives to more than making up for. Mr. Jesus brought Europeans to America as a kind, loving favor to the overworked native peoples. Mr. Jesus knew that farming is horrible, hard work. So Mr. Jesus, America's first career coach, moved the Indians to arid, rocky land behind barbed wire where they didn't have to do any backbreaking tilling, planting, or harvesting. Because nothing would grow there. Wasn't he good to them? When the Europeans first arrived, Mr. Jesus had them teach English to the soon-to-be sightseeing natives so they could read the autographed Bibles. He sold them as going-away gifts, and so he could understand them if they ever prayed for better real estate, which apparently they did not. No. Mr. Jesus also had the Europeans give the natives mirrors and diseases. The mirror was to see if they had the disease, and the disease was to see if they had health insurance. Now, recall the story of Lazarus?
Lazarus, he was a zombie.
Verily, Mr. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And what's the lesson we learn from this story, children?
I know that Mr. Jesus liked to do magic tricks.
No, Matthew. It's that Lazarus was lucky enough to have the cash to pay Mr. Jesus up front. Oh, Mr. Jesus then had settlers, which is what we call white immigrants, children, help themselves to the land the French and Spanish had helped themselves to. Hence the proverb, do unto others what they have just finished doing unto others. Mr. Jesus then drove the French and Spanish out because Jesus didn't speak Spanish and because, well, they were French. But while Mr. Jesus only wanted people who spoke English in his new country,
When you're here, let's speak American.
he didn't cotton to colonists who crudely dropped their H's like Eliza Doolittle.
Or Adele.
Or Adele, yes. So Mr. Jesus kicked the Brits out by writing the Declaration of Independence. Recite after me, children. We, the white people of
Boy, that's the Constitution.
tomato, potato. They both established a Christian nation.
Bull hockey. Neither did.
Judas, need I remind you what happened last Sunday when Timmy started his socialist yapping about giving to the poor? Oh, and speaking of that unfortunate incident, Buster,
Yes, miss.
yeah, you can have Timmy's old desk.
Yippee.
As we all know, he's not coming back. But you know who did come back, children? The British. They can never take a hint. They tried to destroy the Capitol building. Yes, the Redcoats did a practice run for the Red Hats. But the British left again when Mr. Jesus pointed out that any war called the War of 1812 could only last 1 year. 1 year. That takes us to 1857, when the Dred Scott decision was issued by the wise daddies at the Supreme Court. They declared that the rights in the Constitution Mr. Jesus had written did not apply to people who forgot to be white, sort of like how today's Supreme Court decided that the right to vote still doesn't apply to them. Okay, class. That's it for the 1800s. Absolutely nothing else happened until 1900. At least nothing worth talking about. Next week's lesson, the Holy Cold War. The glorious fight between Christian capitalists and godless communists. Spoiler, we won!
Did we win that one, Mrs. Bowers?
Goodness, what a blasphemous question. America always wins, children. As we learned in the last election, you can't lose when Mr. Jesus is on your side. Glory.